Hi. So, let's say I wanted to control you. Like really, really control you. What would I do? I'm gonna start with your body. With the needs you can't escape. I'm gonna start with water, with food, with shelter, with your desire for an environment that isn't toxic. And then I'm going to control your supply to all those things. To the wells, to the seeds, to healthcare. But I'm not going to stop there, because I want complete control. And so I've been studying you, I've been noticing you, and I have realized that you don't seem to like pain that much. You don't seem to like to be confined. You don't seem to like violence. And so I'm going to offer you some protection. I'm going to make sure that there is no one that could hurt you more than me. And so, if you come with me, I will protect you. But if you don't, I won't. And so in political science terms, that's what we call the monopoly of violence. That's what every state has. That's the model right now. All these parts of controlling our physical bodies are reliant on a model that looks something like this. It's about the idea of scarcity, of that you need to come to me to get that thing that you cannot live without. Scarcity and a central point. And so that central point, indeed, the nation state is a very, very strong part of that. But it's also what the nation state has. It has a register. The first written texts, they weren't the beautiful poetic poems, they were the boring registers. Who owns what? Who controls what? Who controls whom? And so we tie these registers with violence. We back them with violence. All of this you know, because all of this we live all the time. And so that's the beginning for me and my grand scheme of ultimate domination. But it's not enough, because as we know, historically, rulers don't always know when enough is enough. So I'm going to go ahead and not just settle for what you need. I'm going to go to what you love. And one of the things that we love is electricity. We love everything it's given us. The way that we can control what is night and what is day, the way it's made the wheels of modernity spin, and the way it's given us time, freed up our time. And that time, well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to want to control that too. And the way I'm going to control the time, that's a little different. That's going back to what we love again. And so what do we love? What do each and every one of you love? Probably people. Probably other people. Connections. And so I'm going to look at where you go to get that love, to get that connection. And simultaneously, I'm going to look at where you get your stories for how life makes sense. The narratives that decide what has value, what is a worthy life. And when I start to venture into these things, the things that we love, the connections, the stories, it gets a little harder. Because I can't just say, okay, this is the territory where my police, where my military is in effect. Not in the digital era, at least. Because in the digital era, theoretically, we have a lot of choices for which stories we believe, which places we go to connect. And so instead of commanding, I need to compel. And that is the world of social media and of seductive media, in a way. The gamified experiences, the gamified platforms that has made it possible to be so social, but it's come all the time with a cost. And so 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if I wanted to control narratives, maybe some TV stations would have been enough. But now, I want to decide what the right answer is to a question 63,000 times per second. That's what Google does. 63,000 times per second, there is the decision of what is the right answer, what is the right priority, what is the right information. And so clearly what I have just described is the nation state, contingent on our body's needs, and the tech state, contingent on the mind's desires. Nation state, physical body, what we need. Tech state, what we love. And we are currently citizens of both these worlds. But they have something in common. Scarcity. The fact that you need to come to this particular platform to be with those particular people that you love so much. We call it the network effect, that when an entity has grown large enough, when all your friends are on it, what do you do? Of course you have to be there. There is no technical need for it to be like that, but there is a social need by now. And so in my continuous world domination scheme that I have going today, I'm also going to start figuring you all out. The way you can with a best friend who you know so well that even before you look at your best friend's face, you pretty much know what that best friend is going to think about something. You know what I mean? Do you have a friend like that? You know what the reaction will be before you even talk to them. Well, that perhaps even wasn't my initial plan, but I realized that all our actions in these digital spaces left traces that could make me understand you. And the better I understood you, the better I knew how to keep you. You know, the classical knowledge is power. Well, the ultimate power is prediction. If you know so much about a person, about what makes them tick, about what makes them happy, about what makes them addicted, then you can steer and you can understand exactly which actions will lead to what consequences. And for every moment we give up data about ourselves, which we do by just, hanging out with our friends in these digital environments. Every time we give up our data, we're not giving up just our privacy. That's a very common discussion, that data is about privacy. It's not, it's about power. We give away our power because we're making ourselves predictable. So if this is my great scheme, At this point, you might think that I'm a little bit creepy. And if you feel that way, maybe you want to resist. How do we resist anything at all? What's the core two things that we can always do? Their cost is very different from time to time, from space to space. But we have two ways of resisting any kind of oppression. We have voice and we have exit. And so voice, that's our complaining. That's saying we don't like this. That's making noise in a figurative way, in a literal way. But when it comes to the text states, there aren't any numbers to call, any streets to go out into and demonstrate in. And exit, well, we've already touched upon that. The cost of exit is not getting what we love. The thing is, we're a smart humanity when it comes to resistance. We've realized that there is power in organization. And so time and time again throughout history, we have organized. We've done this cool little thing. But what does that look like for a digital citizen? What does it look like to resist when we are being more and more understood and calculated every moment? Here I want to suggest an unlikely hero. I think we should turn to our influencers. So often they are laughed at or seen as these strange kind of, all they do is live lives that look good on pictures. Like it seems so vain. Straight? Like this? Oh, sorry. Not only have I controlled you, I have tortured you a little bit sound-wise as well. Well, influencers. There are only 13,000 YouTubers who have more than 1 million subscribers. That's a very small group. If they chose to organize and leave to another platform, that's a serious movement. But we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen unionized influencers. But this is the way, talking about an elastic mind, this is the way we need to start thinking. What is our role as digital citizens, and what is our resistance? Now, at this point, you might say, but is it really that problematic? Like, okay, you just said that you wanted to control the world. That's creepy. But these companies, they're supplying us with pretty awesome experiences. Like, who isn't in some way grateful to Google for some service, sometime, somewhere? I know one of my coolest experiences, like that I can look back on and be like, oh, wow, is when I saw Google Earth for the first time. And, you know, you zoom in and you zoom out, and it's like, wow. Is that where I live? Is that my planet? That's, I think many of us have some kind of reciprocity by now, a built-up gratitude. But that's where this Disney villain comes in. Because there is a litmus test. There is an intuition pump. If you want to know if a system is reasonable or not. And that test is that you imagine overnight, a leadership. It can be of a company or a state or even a family, whatever you might imagine. And you imagine that the ruler becomes a Disney villain, super, like just the worst overnight like that, which is not obviously the way things happen in the world. It's gradual. But if you imagine instant, can the citizens, can the people who are being ruled, can they overthrow the leader? And the answer so far in human history has been yes, they can. Every empire has fallen. There's been a way, there's been an out. But if we are being understood so well that it is clearer to the algorithms that are monitoring our patterns or are analyzing our data and our patterns, it's more clear to them who is the organizer or who are the dangerous people who potentially could become organizers. If it's more clear to those algorithms than it is to us, if we don't even know that we are, if the algorithm knows before us if we're depressed, if we're pregnant, if we're happy, all these things that at this point already Google can understand, then what will our assistance look like in a couple of years? How possible will it be? And I talked about these two entities, that it's on the one hand the nation state, and it's on the other hand the tech state. But we also see them merging. We see tech states that are gunning for things that have been very classical nation state things like currency, but also solving projects and problems like climate change. Google's latest investments in climate change are on the one hand fantastic. On the other hand, can you imagine if it's Google that turns out to solve this thing that nation states have not been able to collaborate on? That is a powerful story. And that's when it's important to keep this in mind. The difference between public government and private government. Now, there are companies that are public governments. What this means, what a public government means, is that the people that are being affected by the way something is ruled, they can affect it back. And private government, that's when they can't. So private government, that's a dictatorship, and also many companies, and certainly the tech states. So, okay, that for resistance, that for voice and exit, that for a very little idea about influencer power. But what if you wanted to be free? There's a word that's really hard to spell, pronounce, and translate into Arabic. Ephemeralization. This is my favorite word in the entire world. And I think this is the word that can bring us there, that can make us freer than we have ever been. Ephemeralization is a process where humans can do more and more with less and less. So you start with describing this rectangle, and you need a solid block. But then human ingenuity makes it so that we realize maybe we can take out that part in the middle. And then we're just trying to create the visual perception of this square. So perhaps we can take out even more, and then perhaps even more. And this is what has happened in the digital space. This is the magic. Poof! And we all know that the screen is going to go away sooner rather than later. It will be perhaps a lens in our eyes. It's definitely this disappearing. And what is that disappearing? If not the opposite of scarcity. Because if we can suddenly access things out of thin air, and I mean that literally, I mean it in things like solar food. This is food made by solar cells out of thin air. It creates food out of air. These create water out of air. And this is not science fiction. These things exist right now. We have what happened with LED lights, with urban farming, with this potential to create things where we used to have to go to a supplier, but instead we can supply ourselves. We have the 3D printing, which is just at the cusp, it's just at the beginning, where what is printed, the tangible things that we still need and that we today have to go to a supplier for, it all comes back to digital sketches that we can share with each other on the internet, which is not a centralized system. It's a distributed system by design. And so ephemeralization, as magic as that sounds, the more you look at the things you love, the more there is no need for them to be scarce. The network effect, sure, it's in effect when it comes to this very moment, but we can move. We can move by organizing, and we can remember that ever since the internet came, we've been sending copies of things to one another. It hasn't been scarce. It is a very strange occurrence when you think about it, that it's been possible to create products, owned products, proprietary software products, out of things that are just copies that we send to one another. But the question that we need to come back to and go to the core of, that is, what do we want and what do we love? And how do we want it to be supplied to us? Because I don't want to control you. I want to control myself. I want to have that agency. And that has been the dream for so many, in so many times and places. And we fail at getting it, but we keep trying over and over again. But in the digital space, we haven't tried yet. And we need to start trying now. Thank you.
Thank you, Carin. Thank you, Carin. We have Q&A. Obviously, our Wanasa time is over, and it's a little bit of a serious topic, but there is always, as you say, a way out. And with this, we open the Q&A with the public. Questions? Here, please.
Thank you for lecture. Very interesting topic indeed. I'm interested in the state tech, or the tech state that you mentioned. We know that there was revolutionary ideas in 30s, 40s when they tried to create the hippie state, 60s experiment. And then there is transition from 60s hippies to the extreme capitalist states. All the companies that we talk about, high-tech companies today, are extreme top-down or pyramid structures. And you're calling for kind of revolution and freedom, as you can say. So what are you proposing to be happening now, next step, in order that these giants who are taking part of their power to be releasing that to the thing? That's one question. Another question, the last diagram looks like you're talking about share economy, and we know now those days that share economy, we don't empower ourselves. There is, again, pyramidal structure behind the share economy as well. What is your thinking about share economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the first question related to what are the next steps? So I'll start with that one. And I'll actually, can I have my slides? No, maybe not.
Go back.
Okay. So I would say first step is two parts. It's stop hating ourselves for procrastinating. Stop being angry with ourselves for how we react in these digital environments. And because there is so much energy, if you will, so much determination that we're directing inwards, and we're saying, oh, I'm just lazy, I'm not focusing, and so on. We need to take that and understand that we are being played and we are being gamed. And then we need to move platforms. And so there are 2 links that I really would like everyone to have with them. One is nomooregoogle.com, and the second is restoreprivacy.com. And there you have the listing of all the options. The other platforms, like where do you go instead of YouTube? And it focuses on the ownership structure. And so, for example, instead of WhatsApp, you go to Signal, because that's owned in a different way, the data isn't gathered, and so on. So that would be the first step. And again, also unionizing among the people who are influential on these platforms. The second question,
about the shared economy.
Sharing economy. So if that is what I'm sort of suggesting, I would say that I'm suggesting co-ownership. And that can be a matter of sharing economy, but sharing economy means a lot of different things. Like it's used in a lot of different ways. The big question comes down to ownership. How are things owned? If it is a matter of sharing a particular resource, is it owned by the people who are taking a part of that? Then I would say yes, 100%. That's the way forward.
Just to encourage you, everyone, to answer the questionnaire here. I promise we are not harvesting your data. You are definitely more than 19 people, so please, your data is extremely important for us to continue the work that we do and deliver what you want for next Nuqat sessions. Thank you. One more question. Everyone is shocked? Here, please.
Hi. Don't you think that at a certain very near future, we as consumers of these digital platforms should have more rights, more protected rights by the states which we belong to, who should apply like the freedom of expression laws, freedom of privacy on these big companies, where if we do not agree to share anything we don't want to share, then they are to abide by law, that they should not be selling this data, sharing this data, or whatever. Don't you think we should take it up a notch to a legal contract between us and them?
Excellent question. Essentially, why aren't we using the laws that are supposed to be there to protect us when it comes to this digital sphere? And the easy answer would be yes, let's do that. But I think we're then a little bit missing out on the opportunity that exists by creating platforms. So, for example, if we look at the potential of a global currency, we look at the potential of a global insurance scheme, these things that Facebook is likely to be the one suggesting. I think a lot of those things are extremely interesting to get past the oppression that the nation-state system also has within itself. But so rather than making the movement of global ephemeralization smaller, we just need to take ownership of it ourselves. So that's why it's like, on the one hand, what is going on here is very interesting, because we're starting to see the potential of feeling solidarity and empathizing with people in other spaces, but it's just that the ownership structure isn't in our favor. But if we use the national legal systems to strike back, we could definitely sort of give the current nation-state system more time, but I don't think that's necessarily the way towards more agency, more personal agency.
Last question, over there. Yeah, hello, Habibi, microphone. Thank you.
Good evening, and really beautiful lecture. I just want to have one point actually to ask you about. You're actually saying that I should not actually share my information, so would you like us to use anonymous websites, stores, or instead of using WhatsApps, we can use Telegrams or anything else? Coming from that perspective, that means I'll be totally anonymous to anyone else, and everyone is going to pick up my information and share it. But based on the digital devices we're using, it's either going to be iOS or Google or Android, to be exact. So we won't be able to find any way to maneuver from these so-called hooks that we should be going through. So I don't think we can go back to the Stone Age and use Nokias anymore. I'm sorry. And I do remember that one of the newspapers actually released, sorry guys, we're not going to publish any written papers anymore. Go read it on your iPads. So what do you suggest to do?
Okay, so excellent question about like what are the actual options for us right now. And I think there are two answers to that question. There are some places where we can start to opt out already. And so those are the ones that are listed very well on nomorgoogle.com, for example. And so you can see your options for whatever services you like and what your options are. But we also need to see much more entrepreneurship and like creation in this field. Just the other day, Jimmy Wales, the sort of creator of Wikipedia. I mean, we've all created Wikipedia, but he launched a platform called VT Social, which is there to, the way that he's framing it is that it's about fake news and so on, but it's also another kind of ownership, which means it's another kind of power. So we should be right now really encouraging, and if we are ourselves entrepreneurial, this is a great opportunity because people are waking up to that, oh, that's not why, like, we didn't sign up for this whole package, which is, there's an excellent book that came out early this year that's called Surveillance Capitalism that I think is really waking people up as well. And so at this moment, if you are putting forward a platform, this is the time.
Thank you very much, Carin. To add to your point, though, it is difficult sometimes when you do have that entrepreneurship spirit. You still have the bigger organizations that eventually acquire these smaller entrepreneurs. So what happened with Uber buying Carin, which was a regional developer for the same service, or what Google does, or what the big franchises in fashion do as well for smaller brands. So we need to also have laws and regulations to stop these acquisitions.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.